abortion laws. It comes after Donald Trump's complete surrender of judicial nominations to the Christian right. More than 100 federal judges and counting, plus 2 Supreme Court justices who will now try to overturn Roe versus Wade once and for all. Back with me, Fordham professor Christina Greer and Republican strategist Joe Watkins. Joe, is the plan to overthrow Roe versus Wade, or in some ways alter it and dilute its bite?
I think maybe for some Republicans, both, either one or the other, but those would probably be the top 2 for some Republicans. For other Republicans, they believe that women ought to be in charge of their own bodies, just as men are in charge of their bodies. And so for other Republicans, that's not the case. That's not the plan. But for some Republicans, that would be the plan.
Given the polling on this, most Americans are clearly not supporting this. So are they just tone deaf, Christina? Or are they just so adamant in their view that they're going to force their will, that they're just going to go and fight this? Obviously, when you see Alabama, Missouri, Ohio, and other states doing, Georgia, and other states doing it, it seems like they just don't care.
No, and they don't. I mean, I think the work that the National Institute for Reproductive Health is doing is really key and crucial for us to understand what's going on these state house level electeds who are really trying to change laws in state houses across the country. And so we're seeing it now, and it's very shocking. But we have to understand this is part of a larger Republican agenda to make sure that they take away as many rights to women. But also, like, we have to recognize they are very afraid of the looming 2040 and Latinos becoming the #1 racial group in the United States. This is part of, you've heard sort of on the local level, certain electeds telling white women that they have a duty to reproduce. I mean, so it's part of a much larger Trump administration agenda with Stephen Miller and sort of the ghost of Stephen Bannon in the background. Exactly.
Joe, talking about the larger agenda, are we also looking at them slowly going toward a states' rights agenda where the Supreme Court can come back now and say, well, these are the things that we want to maintain in Roe versus Wade, but states can decide these things? And as we see women's rights possibly going into a states' rights kind of construct, next will be voting rights and civil rights, moving back toward not having a strong federal government overseeing things like protecting people's rights.
I hope that that's not the case, but that certainly is the hope of some people, that to move toward a states' rights agenda. I would hope that we're still in a mode where the federal government, the central government, is the most important and the most powerful, and that you aren't passing on to states the right to do what they want to do when they want to do it, because that's when there's all kinds of opportunity for bad things to take place. But for some people, that's the agenda, sadly.
Well, Christina, you're our professor teaching us all this history. When we don't have a strong federal government enforcing rights, that is the threat to everything. We would have never had the civil rights. We would have never had...
Civil Rights Act, Voting Rights Act, Immigration Act. I see those as a triumvirate of acts that Lyndon Baines Johnson helped push forward. I think we're in a very crucial moment because in the 60s, we looked to the federal government for protection from states' rights. But ironically enough...
Brown versus Board of Education, 65th anniversary Friday.
And so, but now there's a reversal, because if you look at the National Institute for Reproductive Health, they're looking at states like Massachusetts, states like Vermont, states like New York, to shore up abortion rights for women, right? And so they're looking at a state-level strategy because there is this fear of a federal mandate coming into play where we're taking rights away from women. So in many ways, it'll be curious to see, and not just on abortion rights, but on civil rights and immigration and voting rights as well, are we going to look to certain states, blue states, even though every state is a red state with blue cities, but states with majority blue cities that can protect us from the federal government as they try and roll back so many hard-fought provisions that really do promote equity and democracy and decency in America.
Your political strategist hat, I know it's Sunday and you're a preacher like I am, and but put on your political strategist hat. Will these attacks on women's rights cost politically Republicans in the next election? Because there's definitely people that are independent, women and men. And I would say we had Dr. Wynn on from Planned Parenthood, as you saw a few minutes ago. There are definitely those that will say, even in those areas of voters, that, wait a minute, this is something that's going too far.
Yeah, well, you even have some very conservative Christian preachers like Pat Robertson and others who said this goes too far. And so, yeah, there's a price to be paid for it. There are consequences for everything that you do in this life, and certainly political consequences for everything that you do in this life. And so, yeah, for those who are pushing that kind of an agenda, there's a price to be paid for it. And that's not all Republicans. I like a governor like Charlie Baker, for instance, in Massachusetts, for whom my daughter worked, by the way, who I think is doing a great job, just got reelected to a second term, and is somebody who is not partisan, but is just about how do we serve people the best way that we can. That's a Republican that I like. That's the kind of person that I like.
But we've not seen, Christina, a Republican leader come out and just forthright say this is wrong and take the stage and become the face of Republicans saying, I'm a Republican, but this is wrong and we cannot start eroding women's rights.
Well, I've called Republican sycophants. I mean, they've been mealy-mouthed on issue after issue. But we also have to remember, there are certain women who can uphold patriarchy in ways that we can't even imagine, right? The architect of the Alabama bill, a woman.
And
the governor who signed it into legislation, a woman. And so we have to, you know, lots of pundits are saying, oh, well, you know, women will backlash against the Republican Party for these draconian policies. It's like, there are a lot of white women who voted for Kemp. There are a lot of white women who voted for Donald Trump. There are a lot of white women who are upholding sort of key issues that are actually adversarial to their livelihood. So,
which is why you need to really make these issues clear to people what's at stake. Let me thank you.